morning and good afternoon or good evening, wherever you hear this broadcast. This is Pastor Sadie Thompson, and I'm excited. No, I'm happy, glad. That means I'm glad twice, you guys. I have with me the one and the only illustrious Charles Cravins. God bless you, man of God. How are you today?
Good morning, Pastor Thompson. It's so great to see you and to be here with you. I want to thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
You are such a gentleman and a scholar. I'm gonna have to take my hat off to your mom and daddy. They trained you very well. Trained you very well. I could tell you come from good stock, as they would say.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You know what? Everybody doesn't know who you are, but I want to preface the conversation before we get into it. This series that we're doing on Enlightened TV is Men of Excellence. And the reason that we asked you to be a part of this is because you exemplify a man wearing several different hats, but who loves his people and who loves his community, and the balance that you have in with your family. It's just a blessing to see a role model in this day and time. You see so many, and you hear so many devastating stories about our culture and our community that's not uplifting, but I can truly say that you're not one of those, but you are a man of excellence. And I'd like you to share your story with us, if you'd be so kind. Who is Charles Cravins?
Well, first of all, let me say you're too kind. I really appreciate what you're saying. The things that you said are what I aspire to be. I try to be a servant of the community. I was born in Mallet, which is a country community about you being, I think, originally from Kansas City and then California. You probably don't know where Mallet is.
No, not really.
Yeah, to me, when I was growing up, it was the center of the universe. It's about halfway between Opelousas and Eunice. It's a community that's been there. Our first ancestors came here as slaves in 1764, came to this area of Louisiana. And my ancestor was a woman named Marguerite Gilray. And for anyone who's interested, you might want to look up the Margarita case on the internet. She went to court in the 1780s to get her freedom for her and her children.
Yeah.
And was able to gain that. And our family's been there ever since. And now it's, of course, expanded to thousands of people all over the country. We have quite a few in California, Texas, different parts of the country. But I grew up on a 34-acre family farm. My father couldn't read and write, never went to school a day in his life. His father died when he was 6 years old. And so he had to start working. And I know today, it's hard to believe that a 6-year-old child would actually be working to help support the family. But this was in 1919. So things were much different then. And so he got a job. My father got a job at 6 years old, riding a horse and checking fences for my grandfather. If he would see that a fence was broken, he would go back and say, this is where the fence was broken. Actually, I said my grandfather was my great-grandfather he was working for. Name was Jean-Baptiste Gilray. So my father couldn't read and write. My mom finished 6th grade. They had 9 children. The community, Mallet, was a community that was based around, it was centered on the church, St. Anne's Catholic Church in Mallet. And that was really the center of the community that had been there since the 1850s. And it was, what we were grounded in was, family and church. On that 34-acre farm, you couldn't support a family today on a 34-acre farm. And actually, you couldn't do it back then either. So my father was also a laborer, worked in plants as a construction worker. We grew up picking cotton. We planted cotton. We raised all the food that we ate. So we had chickens, hogs, cows, turkeys, guineas, ducks, vegetables, of course, watermelons, cantaloupe, anything that you can imagine. And we would grow it and we would eat it. And in the early days, my earliest remembrance, we didn't do that with a tractor. We did it with 2 mules. Their names were Rena and Kate. And so that's how my dad farmed, and my older brothers. When by the time I came along, things were a little bit different. They had gotten a lot easier than when my older brothers and sisters were living. But I can never forget, and one of the guiding things in my life, and when you ask me who I am, this is what I think of. I think of my father getting up every morning, and he would either catch a bus or hitchhike from Marlette to Baton Rouge or Lake Charles to go and do construction. And it wasn't just him. There were a lot of people in this community know this story, and they share this story. This is not just me. This is our story, our community story. From Opelousas and Eunice and the Plaisance and all these areas, Sunset, Grand Coteau, Freelow Cove, Prairie Ron, Washington. A lot of folks went through this. Yes. And I say went through it. I say it as though I don't mean it to be a bad thing, because really it's a blessing. You know, all of this is a blessing to me. Yes, yes. So my father would get up, he would go out and work construction. And then he would come back and he would get in the fields when he would get back. And he would work until it was dark. And then the next day he would come in, he would eat supper, he would go to bed. The next morning, he would get up and do it all over again. And then when we finally got a tractor, when I was probably 7 or 8 years old, then he didn't have to stop at dark because there were lights on the tractor. So he could work until about 10 o'clock at night, go to bed, get up at 3:30 the next morning, do it all over again. My father, I don't believe, my father lived to be 84 years old. I don't ever recall him telling me one time that he loved me, but he showed me by what I just described to you. He showed the type of love that he had for his family. Yes. And so we were raised like that, people of faith. And that's who I am. I'm one of 9 children whose father couldn't read and write. Yes. I'm married. My wife's name is Mona. We have 4 children and 4 grandchildren. Amen. Who I love dearly, all of them. And I went to, graduated from Southern University Law Center. I'm a practicing attorney and former district attorney. Everything that you described is wonderful to me, because I can relate to it in a lot of different ways. I can go back 4 generations in my family, and it was some humble beginnings. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't trade it for nothing, no. For the love that I had and the loyalty that the people were loyal to me. I learned loyalty and honor and respect. And I can see that when you talk to me, when you express to me your background, I felt every bit of that. I could relate to it 100%. So I'm proud of who you are, of your parents. They had something. Yeah. I'm like you. I wouldn't come from somewhere else for anything in the world. And you learn. You said we came from humble beginnings. A lot of times, coming from humble beginnings is not the challenge. The challenge is to remain humble. Now you're preaching good right there. But I believe but that's true, because you can get so caught up with your press that you forget the whole mission. That's exactly and I'm sure you've seen that. I'm sure you have. Too many times. And it's disgusting. I'm sorry. I get a little, maybe that's just me. But I'm here to talk about you, so I need to be quiet. Oh, no, you don't. We're good. But you seem to be, we're vibing here, and I'm so can relate to what you're saying. I wish I didn't, but I could so. But something is interesting. You could have chose any profession. What was it that made you go into the legal system?
I'm very curious about that, sir. I should say Esquire, as I want to give you all your
No, I tell people all the time, my mama didn't name me lawyer or attorney. My mom named me Charlie. And that's who I am.
Okay.
I think it wasn't until I don't want to try to come across as a Bible scholar, because I'm not.
No. You come across, be your authentic self. This is what
I just want
about.
Okay. But there is a psalm, I think it's Psalm 37, verses 23 and 24, that says the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. And he delights in his path.
Come on.
And so I think that from the very beginning, that is just who I was going to be. Didn't know it for a long time. Growing up with 9 children, you grow up, first of all, you learn that you have to defend yourself, because you got 9 siblings, and you're nobody to them.
Where are you in the hierarchy of number 9? Are you in the middle? Are you the baby? Where are you?
Next to last. Just in the place where you can get lost. Okay, the next wasn't the baby and wasn't the oldest. The next to last, wasn't in the middle. So you learn that you have to defend yourself, but you also learn a real sense of fairness. You have people every day telling mom, this happened this way, and you feel, well, this is not fair to me. And my mother particularly, who was like so many households where you have working fathers, our mom was the rock. She was the person that held everybody together. She was our moral guide, and taught us. And our mom was very, very fair. And so I learned a real sense of fairness. So in school, I did very well in school. From the time that I was a little boy, I always did do very well. And my classmates, my teachers, always thought I was going to be a lawyer. From elementary school, my first principal was a gentleman named Charles Loeb. I remember when I started school, Charles Loeb came into the class one day. I was probably in 2nd grade by that time. And he said, this young man is our next Gene Thibodeau. So you probably don't know who Gene Thibodeau is, but Gene Thibodeau is the recently retired Chief Judge of the 3rd Circuit Court of Appeal, a brilliant man who's from the same area that I'm from.
So he prophesied over your life right then and there.
Yeah, Mr. Loeb was a remarkable man. So anyway, that was just the general consensus as I, going through school. But got out of school, went to UL, and I had probably been, which of course at the time was USL, I had probably been to Lafayette maybe 5 times in my life. It's just, that was the big city. We'd never go there.
Right.
The only place I ever remember going to Lafayette before I went to college was where the consolidated government is now, used to be a Sears Roebuck. And so we go there, and that was on very, very rare occasions. So I went to UL, 17 years old, advanced placement in math and English, and I didn't go to class. And so after the first semester, I dropped out, joined the Army, because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, but I know that I didn't want to waste it. So I joined the Army. It would have been very, very humiliating to my family, I thought, to just waste my life like that. So I wanted to do something. I knew I wasn't on the right path. So I joined the Army. That really didn't do a whole lot to straighten me out. But I got out of the Army after 3 years and started going to school at LSUE, got married while I was there, and got a job in radio in 1979. Wow. And I was just walking down the street one day, Pastor, and this gentleman, and talk about, the Psalm, and steps being ordered. I'm walking down the street one day, and this young lady who was in college with me knocks on the window. There was a big picture window at KEUN on 2nd Street in Eunice. And she said, Charles, can you come in? Mr. Darwin wants to meet you. I think she called him Carl. Carl wants to meet you. Well, Carl was the manager of this radio station.
Mm-hmm.
And I just popped my head in to tell Jeanette Poulard, hi, how you doing? And so what happened is the next day she said, Charles, can you come by the radio station? Carl wants to meet you. He might have a job for you. So he had just heard my voice and heard me tell her hello, and he gave me a job. So I started doing that. My wife and I moved to Lafayette, and I got a much better job in radio in Lafayette. I was an on-air personality at KEUN for about 2 or 3 years. When I went to Lafayette, I soon became a sales manager. Our intent when we went to Lafayette was that we would remain in school. But I have this thing that I say, sometimes you're doing too well to do better. Started being able to pay our bills, have a couple of extra dollars to do things. And to leave all that to go to school was just a lot. So, and we just, said, look, we're doing well now. Why do that? So that went on, for years, worked for congressmen. I sold insurance, I worked for a congressman. And then my mom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer.
Oh.
And I am the one who brought her to the doctor in Baton Rouge when he gave her prognosis.
Mm.
And on the way back from there, he told her she had about 18 months to live. So a year to 18 months. So she wound up living about 2 years after that. But on the way back from that meeting, it was very quiet. I think I was much more sad than my mom was. I wasn't expecting that. And so I started thinking, my mom never wanted anything from me, but she wanted me to be a lawyer. She would ask me all the time, why aren't you a lawyer? Why didn't you get a law degree?
Oh.
So that was on my mind for about a week. I was already working in the district attorney's office. I was the chief administrative officer at the district attorney's office at that time. So this conversation, this thought from my mom's, the ride back with my mom was on my mind for about a week. So I'm sitting in the office one day, and a person named Jesse Gilry walked in. And he said to me, he had never come to visit me before. And he said to me, he said, Charles, I came here to ask you something. And I said, what's that, Jesse? He said, you're here, you run this entire district attorney's office. Everybody here answers to you. Why aren't you a lawyer?
My God.
Now, this has been on my mind for a week.
Okay.
And when he did that, it felt to me like, okay, this is beyond you now. You need
confirmation.
To go. You need to go and see about doing this. So I did. So I went to law school, and worked my regular job, and went to law school full time, and became an attorney. The reason for that, though, which is actually the question that you asked me, is that I've always had a real, as I said earlier, a real sense of fairness.
Yes.
And the way and to protect people who were vulnerable.
Come on.
And that could be a victim, or it could be a person who was accused. It's what's right. It's all about what's right.
Yes.
And I really, really felt that that was an opportunity to do that. And another strongly motivating factor was my children. Okay. Because I wanted my children to see that you could do whatever you put your mind to. Yeah. And by the time I went to law school, they were old enough to understand that they were old enough to understand what I was doing, and the sacrifice that was involved in it. Yes. And I was hoping that, like my father, even though I told my children and tell them that I love them, But like my father, I wanted to set that example to show them what they can do. So that's what, all of that is what made me become a lawyer. I've been, in high school, there was a conflict over some rules for students. I was 15 years old. Out of all the children in the parish, I'm the one that went to the school board office to complain about it. I have always been a person who just will stand. I feel like I am, and I think other people will agree. I'll stand up for people. It's just the way, and it doesn't matter what color you are, who you are. If I think you're right, I'm with you. And I'm going to say something.
Yeah, you stand up, but you stand out. That's the part that you're not admitting. You're standing out. But that's okay. I got you.
I appreciate that. I really think of myself as a servant to the community. I don't. It's very gratifying to me that when people come up to me and they acknowledge how I've been helpful to them.
Yeah.
But it's still interesting to me, and something that I don't understand is what you just said, is that I do stand out in a crowd. When I'm there, people know I'm there. And that's just interesting to me, because to me, I'm small. And I know that people find that hard to believe. Interestingly, really, really interesting to me, is that some people think that I'm aloof, maybe even arrogant. And what people don't understand is that a lot of times shyness looks like that.
Yeah.
And people don't know.
But they also don't understand, because of who you are. You get 99,000 people coming at you with all these different requests. So you really don't know. You have to be mindful what it is and what do you want.
But
that's just a personal.
Yeah, but I've gotten really used to handling that. People do come at you with some things, but there's a way to tell people,
sure,
and discuss with them. And listen, this is my philosophy. I started this at the district. I started this actually before I went to the district attorney's office. My philosophy is, if something is important enough to you for you to come to me with it, then it's important enough to me for me to try to help you with it.
Oh my God, that's awesome, Mr. Craven.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
You need to put a
pin in that. That's awesome.
Yeah, because even though once I listen to your problem, and look, a lot of times people just don't know where to turn. So people would think, why are you bothering that man with that? If you're thinking about somebody, you might hear this conversation and say, why are they bothering this man with that? But a lot of times people don't see, they're so deep in the stress of their situation that they don't see an obvious solution. So sometimes you might just tell them the simplest thing, and they're so relieved because their mind was just blocked from that simple thing.
You opened the door.
Right. And so sometimes you get people, sometimes you get people, Pastor, who might have emotional or psychological issues, and they'll come to you with things that really are not logical, but you still can help that person by trying to guide them to the help for their situation. So none of that time is wasted, and any of those folks, anybody that wants to come and talk to me, I'm there for them.
That's wonderful. That again, it radiates what you said about fairness. So you listening to me, you're listening to the story to really put the pieces together. And that takes a weight off of anybody's mind, to be burdened. Trust. If you ever felt burdened or overwhelming, you had a sounding board. That makes a big difference. I can see why the community love you, because you're there for them. Let me ask you another question. Talking about criminal justice, let's talk about that. We realize that the criminal justice system historically has not been a good one in relating to our culture or the Black community. What do you think we could do on both sides to enhance better communication and better actions to get a better result?
I think the first part of my answer to this might surprise you.
Okay, surprise me.
Okay, I'm going to try. I'm not trying to surprise you. It's just the answer, but I think it might surprise you.
Theoretically speaking, of course.
Yeah. I think that as a community, we need to stop involving the police in our business all the time. Now,
I agree.
understand, yeah,
I agree with
understand
that.
what I'm saying. We call the police for things that other people would just handle among themselves, not violently. They would talk to each other. They would talk it out. And look, I am not advocating that people not call the police. One of the reasons that I don't,
not at all.
yeah, one of the reasons that I don't talk about this so often is because I have not figured out a way yet to tell people when they should call the police and when they shouldn't.
True.
Because every situation is different.
Yes.
Certainly, if you feel like you're in danger and you need the police, you should call the police. If you feel that someone else is in danger and you need the police, you should call the police. But if you and your neighbor are arguing across your fence because the grass is not cut the way you like it, or they threw some paper in your yard.
Come on.
That's not something to call the police for. That just gets the police involved in your life. If your child is acting up, generally, that's not a reason to call the police. Now, there are some exceptions to that, of course. But just regular discipline, because you can't get your child to go to bed on time. You got to adjust your parenting skills. You don't bring the police in as parents. So that I think is the first thing. The police, we have too much contact as a community with the police. So what does that do? The police are busy answering calls that takes them away from calls that they should be answering.
Well,
so now they're overworked. They're mad when they get out there because they're overworked. And it just creates a bad environment to start with. The second thing that I would say on the community side, and the reason I'm starting out with what we should do is because, the old song, sweep around your own front door before you come sweep around mine. Okay?
Right.
So that's why I'm bringing up what we should do first.
Okay.
The second thing that I think is that we need to cooperate with the police. We can't, if we have this big thing and snitches, this started probably 15, 20 years ago. You can't talk to the police. You're betraying your community if you talk to the police. How do we expect that these people are going to solve these crimes if we're not willing to say, I saw what happened, this is what happened? We have to be more proactive in cooperating with the police. Now, if the police want that, I'm going to switch now to what the police can do.
Okay.
If they want that, if the police want the community to cooperate with them, then they need to integrate themselves into the community rather than separating themselves from the community.
True.
If you're going to walk around all the time like you're Rambo, people are not likely to relate to you. They're not likely. If you or I, Pastor, are walking around in church or at the grocery store or wherever we are, as though we're better than everybody else who's in there,
True.
as though we can do whatever we want to with any of the people around us, people are not going to relate to us too well. They're not going to be too likely. They can't. They're not going to be too likely to come up to us and say, oh, you're just the person I need to tell my problem to.
Right.
That's not likely to happen.
True.
So I am very much in favor of police getting out of the cars and getting on foot and getting on bicycles. Miss Jones, if Miss Jones is sitting on her porch on Perry Lane, and she sees this police officer coming by, walking, say, hi, Miss Jones. At first, Miss Jones might not talk to you because she might not want her neighbor seeing her talking to you.
Right.
She might feel endangered. But if you do that enough, and Miss Jones develops a trust in you, then if there's something you need to know, Miss Jones is going to call you.
All right.
And so I think that the police need to develop that trust.
Yes.
The second thing that the police need to do is they need to stop covering up for each other. I have this saying that I've been saying for a long time. If the police don't follow the law, then how can we expect anybody else to follow the law? It has to start there. We need to have integrity in our police forces. We need to have people who aren't out to get somebody, but are out to do the right thing. And we have to develop that relationship of trust. If we don't do that, then we're just, it's going to be too difficult to make it. I'll never say that we're not going to make it, because we're going to make it. There's going to be a way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's going to be a way we can make it, but we're going to have to learn that our community has to work with the police. At the same time, it doesn't need to be in a subservient role. We have to remember whose job it is to protect and serve. It's not the community's job to protect and serve. That's the police's job.
Right.
And part of that is to serve. And that's what I think a lot of times people forget. But if you want people to serve you and to do it in the right way, then you need to know how to treat people.
Come on.
We need to know, the police need to know how to treat the community, and the community needs to know how to treat the police. And so that's what I think it's about. I think it's about more interpersonal relationships, getting to know the police, getting to really know their community, and the community getting to know the police and understand that ultimately, if this works right, they're there to serve us.
I like the first part of what I liked everything that you said, but particularly I can relate to calling the right agency for your particular problem. There's a lot of Karens, quote unquote, is the expression Karen, having barbecues in your own yard while being Black. They call it the police. If you live in a predominantly white neighborhood, they got a problem with the music is loud or whatever, just simply, little simple things like that. But it's kind of harder for I'm thinking about the elderly, do they need to call for elderly abuse, the protection to provide protection for the elderly. And I'm thinking about the children for CPS, calling the Children Protective Services. So people just need to be more aware to contact those agencies first versus calling you, and they in turn, if they need investigation or go forth, unless they are in danger, of course, to call. So that's a big input to go. I understand that. I got that.
Yeah,
and that's a good insight.
Yeah,
very good insight.
I when I talked about us calling the police too much, the Karen situation is something that's just.
Is that a new phenomenon? Really and truly?
I think it's gotten a whole lot worse in the last few years. But then on the other hand, we also have social media now. So we see it much more often. But I think that's part of an environment that's overtaken our country that's really, really sad. But the Karen situation, and I know it's so bad that it's even funny. When you see people calling the police for some of the ridiculous things that they call the police for. The situation that I was talking about, though, is us calling the police on us for things that we don't need to have those folks involved in our day-to-day lives. But I said, one of the reasons I don't talk about that too much is to know when to call the police. Those things that you talked about, elderly abuse and child protection.
Yes.
Let me tell you, what I would do is I would call the police and call those agencies. Make sure, I was talking to someone, it's interesting that you brought this up, because yesterday, someone called me with a situation that's related to one of these two issues. I'm not going to say which issue it is. I value people's privacy.
Of course.
When I have a conversation with people, I'll never repeat it. But just broadly speaking, yesterday, someone called me with a situation like this. And with those two things, with people who can't protect themselves.
Yes.
This is what we're talking about. When you're talking about adult protective services and you're talking about child protective services.
And don't forget spousal too.
Yeah, and spousal abuse.
Domestic violence is look like they're doing an increase. It's a rise.
Yeah, that's a thing that people should not keep to themselves.
Definitely not.
Is domestic violence. But what I told this person yesterday is I set them up with an appointment actually this morning with one of those agencies. But what I think that you should do in a situation like that is contact everybody who's wearing a badge. As the words I used yesterday when I spoke to this person. Talk to everybody who's wearing a badge, because some agent at some agency, some detective at some agency, some caseworker at some agency might not take your case seriously. Unfortunately, that's too common.
Yes.
So to cut down on that, what you do is you contact everybody who's got a badge and you say, this thing is going on. Y'all need to do something about it.
Yes.
But in addition to those two things, there are certain people who are mandatory reporters.
Absolutely.
So if you have let's say you have an elderly person who gets personal care services in their home. That personal care service provider is a mandatory reporter.
That's true.
If they know that something is going on, then they have a duty to report that. If you are in school and you go to your guidance counselor and you are a young person who's being sexually abused, that counselor is a mandatory reporter. They have to report that abuse. So beyond even talking to everybody who has a badge and every agency, you talk to everyone who might be able to influence this thing. Sure. Because while these caseworkers or detectives might not take your case seriously, if you call, when that mandatory reporter calls and says, look, I put in my file that this person told me that this happened, now they might take it more seriously because there's a paper trail.
Right. And plus, if that mandatory, and a lot of times too, if that mandatory reporter did not report it, they could be liable to go to jail if something happened.
Oh, they can certainly be civilly liable. They can have a really
definitely. With the funnies, anywhere from 10,000 to 5 years in jail or whatever. I forget whatever the exact. But there is, it needs to be, because a lot of people get so friendly. They just like, oh, that's Joe. They just acting out. No,
that's right.
They'll have some problems.
Yeah, that is correct. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Domestic violence is a really,
it's tough.
That is a very, very tough issue.
Because you'll have a bad cop, good cop sometimes. They'll just walk away. And I understand that that's a dangerous situation for the policeman, but it's also more dangerous for the person that's being battered, whether it's a man or a woman.
That's right. I agree with you 100%.
Horrible.
And what you get, and from my experience at the DA's office, I saw this over and over again. 99% of the time, the battered party is going to come in within 48 hours and ask that those charges be dismissed.
That's crazy.
For various different reasons. Some of them might be that they're afraid.
I understand, because they come back with more broken bones. I get that. They're
totally they feel unprotected from the abuser. The other thing is you have the financial. They're afraid financially. Because
take care of the burden.
Who's going to take care of me and the children?
Right.
That's a big thing. Then you also have the classic, which is the abuser comes back and they're more lovey-dovey than they've ever been in their lives.
I'm sorry.
But that is a temporary situation. And so this is probably the most unpopular policy I had in the district attorney's office.
Wow.
Was that we were not dismissing a domestic violence charge just because you said that you wanted it dismissed. We would not do that. You have to give us a reason. You have to tell me this really did not happen. You lied to the police, and you have to make me believe that. Because that happens too now. People will call the police and say, oh, he hit me or he choked me, and it's not true. They're mad, but they know the police will come in. So that happens. And we, one of the unfortunate things, and so we wouldn't just dismiss a domestic violence charge. There had to be more to it than that, because it's so dangerous. I mean, that's a situation, you have two people who are, they're living together. Something could go off at any second when you have that type of situation. Mm-hmm. So one of the things, though, that really strikes me, and it's not a popular idea, but I can tell you from years, well over 2 decades of experience, this is the truth. Victims of domestic violence tend to leave one abusive relationship and go to another one.
It's called a familiar spirit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because they have been programmed or groomed to that. Mm-hmm. And it takes that break. It takes that disconnection. It can be broken.
Yeah. I agree with you. It can be broken.
It can
I agree. Yeah. And so I think, so what we would do is we would recommend counseling for the victim.
Definitely.
So that you could have a person come in there. This is not blaming you for choosing this person. What it is trying to help you to break that cycle.
New mindset.
Yeah, get a new mindset and understand that that's not
normal
a lot of times
behavior. That's not normal. What you lived through was nothing normal about that.
That's right. And so that's something that was always very disheartening to me, was to see the same victims come in, but they have a different abuser. And so those types of things all need to be understood so that we can try to address that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's awesome to hear that you, as a district attorney, understand that. I'm just going to be honest with you. I've met a lot of different people in the system who don't necessarily agree with you, or they have a bias, or they feel, I guess, immune. You've seen so much trauma and tragedy of the human spirit, you just kind of get numb to it. You see it and you don't see it. It doesn't mean anything, but to hear your passion that you grasp the understanding of the situation and you're moving forward, that's very refreshing. It really, really is.
Let me give you some flowers too now, though, since we said you and I don't know each other too
much. No, we
but,
don't.
Yeah, but you just said something just now that showed a level of insight that most people don't have. I just want to clarify to everybody, just in case people don't know, I'm no longer at the district attorney's office. I'm a privately practicing attorney now, considering strongly running for judge, but that's a different story. But you just said that people become immune. As far as the staff in the district attorney's office, that was the single thing that I worked to keep our staff from becoming. Mm-hmm. The entire time I was there, because the tendency is that after you see so much of this, there's nobody who comes in there who's happy. Something bad has happened to them. They have gotten a traffic ticket. They have been the victim. Somebody stole their money. Mm-hmm. There's something. Are they on their way to jail? That's not a good
feeling either. No.
So everybody is not happy when they walk in there. When you deal with that 8-9 hours a day, every day, you develop, it's just a coping mechanism. Mm-hmm. Your tendency, the normal human spirit, your tendency is a survival instinct that you start becoming immune to it.
Yeah.
Just like we become immune to the cold or whatever, flu, whatever. The symptoms aren't as bad once you get used to it. That's a real danger in the system, because what I kept trying to instill in our staff is that person who's standing in front of you right now is a different person from the person that just left. Their situation is a different situation from the one that just left. And so that's what happens a lot with the police force too. They come into a thing, the easiest thing, and the human mind works that way anyway. We tend to want to fit things into a slot. You know,
All right now.
this belongs in this category.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
belongs in that category.
Yeah.
This person looks like this, so this is what they are.
This is their behavior.
That's right. This is their behavior. That's not real life. People are different. So from the public sector, the people who are providing these services to the public, to the community, to the public, that's something that really has to be fought. That sense of immunity, that sense of complacency, that I've seen this before.
Yes.
Now that I've seen this before can be very, very helpful if you're just taking what you've learned and applying it, but understanding that this is a brand new situation.
Right.
I've seen it before gives you resources so that you can help with this situation. But if you're paying attention, you're going to learn something new from this situation.
Right. Don't bring your bias into it. That's the whole key. Leave your bias out of it, because this is not that.
This is not that.
It look like that, but
it might look like that, but it's
that's not it.
By definition, it's not that, because this is a brand new thing.
Come on.
So it can't be that, you know.
Exactly.
And so yeah.
Exactly. You hit the head on. I mean, you nailed that. That was perfectly clear. Even Ray Charles saw that. He ain't even here. He saw that. Okay.
What about Jamie Foxx as Ray Charles? When Jamie Foxx played Ray Charles, you think he could see it too? I love Jamie Foxx as Ray Charles.
He was good. I'll give it to him. He did that. He did that. Let's see. I think I kind of stole the thunder on talking about the CPS and APS. So let me go to my next thing. And we're going to wrap this up in a few minutes, but I'm really enjoying this interview. And I hate to kind of let it go, because, you know, we hitting on some really important things, because the community and the people themselves need to understand the justice system, which is not necessarily just. It's just the system. You need to understand the system. That's me. I'm not putting not putting no shade on it, but sometimes it's different.
Anybody who thinks that we have a close to perfect system, that needs to be dismissed out of hand, because
it's no perfect thing, right?
Yeah, and this one, the criminal justice system, even the civil justice system, is not close to perfect. It's the best that we have, but we need to always try to make it better, because it is not close. Yeah, it's not close to perfect, and it's not close to serving everyone equally.
But we're getting there. We're making strides. We're not going to give up. Never, 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 never.
We're never going to give up.
Never going to give up. That nobody can take away from us. So on that note, what advice would you give a young person who aspires to become a lawyer? And then the second part is, I want you to give a 2 to 3 minute dissertation on giving the people hope not to give up. I always like to leave an interview with what has driven you, what's kept you. I've heard throughout, your family was the makeup, the loyalty, the consistency, the tenacity of your parents. Your father couldn't read, but he carried on. He carried on. And I have to take my hat out to him. That's a man's man. He did what he needed to do to support his family. I think that's, I respect that. Yeah. I always respect that in any man who do that.
Very, very proud of him. I did not mention that my mom's mom died when she was 5. So both of them went through their lives without having a parent of the same
orphans.
So anyway, what would I tell someone who wants to become a lawyer? The first thing I would tell them is that you need to do that for the right reasons. A lot of people want to become a lawyer because lawyer, doctor, engineer, people think that I'm going to make a bunch of money. And you may, and that's wonderful. And if you're good at it, there's a good chance that you will. But that's not the reason to do it. The reason to do something is because you have a passion for it.
Come on.
You have to have a desire to do that thing. And
Yes.
and you should know the reason that you have that passion. And so that would be my first advice, is to make sure that you're doing that for the right reason. After that, what I would say is that I am a big proponent of reading. I think that people, especially young children, reading, and look, you're reading, I'm not talking, you might not be a person who often reads an entire book, but there are so many resources. You and I are connecting over the internet today.
Yes.
There are so many resources of positive information on the internet where you can read the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Los Angeles Times every day. Read, expose yourself to different points of view. That reading is going to help you in every aspect of your education. It's going to help you in math. It's going to help you in history, and do your very best in school. And then just keep your eyes on the prize. And then go to Southern University Law Center. There's nowhere else to go. You need to go there because they're the best law school in the country.
All right, now we understand. We got you, Southern.
Right. And so, but just I think the main thing is do it for the right reason. And you know, you got to do well on the LSAT, which is the law school admission test. You study for that, and just work hard and learn the law and treat your clients with respect and give them what they deserve as your client, which is your service. As far as why we shouldn't give up, as you've said several times, giving up is just not an option.
Come on.
When you think about what we've been through in this country, in this world, you know, I talked about Marguerite Gildery earlier, who came here in 1764 as a slave, had to go to court after she was first granted her freedom. Then some people took it away. To keep her and her children out of slavery, she had to go to court, which was a long shot in Louisiana in the 1780s, but won that case. And then, you know, her children had to struggle to make a life for themselves. They made that. Then, but then some of those families had to leave in the 1850s because there was so much persecution in Louisiana. They had to leave. They came back. 1860, Civil War starts till 1865. They made it through that. Then you had your the laws, the Black Code, that people couldn't walk the street. This is after the Civil War, after the slaves were freed. People couldn't walk the street at night. The people of color, you know, you couldn't own a home in the parish. You know, you had to, some white person had to vouch for you. All those things that we want to forget now, but that happened. And it's not that you dwell on those things, but you
need to understand your history.
You need to understand
your history so you can understand your presence, and then you can have a future.
That's correct.
That's my personal.
And I agree with that 100%. So then they go through that. Then, you know, people get the right to vote. That's taken away from them. And then you have people who were terrorized in the early 1900s. Then they go through, you know, people through World War I, which we just had Fort Polk renamed for a Black hero of World War I by the name of William Henry Johnson.
Yes.
So it's now Fort William Henry Johnson. Fought in World War I, but he couldn't fight in an integrated unit. He was segregated. Matter of fact, the U.S. wouldn't even let him fight for them. He could have been a cook. The French assigned him to fight. So you had that. World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, the Civil Rights Movement. We've been through all this, and our people have persevered.
Yes.
Are we going to be the ones who are going to let it go? Can't happen.
Mm-mm.
It cannot happen. We're not built that way.
Come
That's
on.
not who we are. We
Mm.
persevere through no matter what it is.
Come
And
on.
so today, we have to persevere. Losing is not an option.
I like
Failing is
that.
not an option.
It's not.
So the reason that I have hope is because when you asked earlier, one of the things that I wanted to say when you asked who I am, I'm a servant of the community. And as a servant of the community, I associate with the community a lot. I go to a lot of things in the community. I know of a lot of things that are going on. And I can tell you that there are a lot of people, not just one or two, there are a lot of people who are working every day to make a little difference in our community, a little positive difference, whether it's putting benches in the park, or whether it's encouraging young people to leave guns alone, all in encouraging young Black people to make the most of their talents, just providing swimming for children, meals for the elderly, people visiting their neighbors and having an organized community watch program. All of those things are small things that will make a difference in our community. I don't believe that there's going to be one major thing that's going to turn everything around in our community.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a lot of small things.
Yes.
So but all those small things combine to make that whole. Those small things make that one big thing. So what you do and what I do, Pastor, are parts of that whole. We're the ones part of that small thing that makes up the salvation of our community. How is it that we know that our little thing is not that integral part? That's not the one thing that'll make this thing work. With all the other things that are going on out there, how do we know that our one little thing is not the most important thing? So with that thought in mind, how can we ever give up and let all those other people who are trying down? We can't do that. So we have to just keep on doing our thing to try to make our community better. And I am confident that we're going to make it through this because we've come too far. And, I believe in God. And I just don't believe that he's led us this far to let us down now. I don't believe that.
I don't believe that either. That was so well put, and it's exciting to know that. You're right. When all the pieces come together.
Yep. That's what'll make a difference.
You better ask. I'll tell you something. I ain't no punk. Going down fighting.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Ain't no punk. You ain't gonna just punk me out. No, I ain't going. I'm standing.
No, I agree with you. I'm not. There's no quit.
No, like they used to say, don't you cross that line. Whatever you do with the little kid in the sand before they get ready to fight. You want to fight, don't you cross this line because it's going down. You cross this line. That's what we're going to do.
That's
I'm going to fight in my faith and I'm going to stand firm. I really, really enjoyed this interview. It was very informative and it just reaffirmed you definitely are a man of excellence. I want to bless you and your wife, your family, everybody that's connected to you 1,000 times more, and knowing that you have made a difference, that people can call you Mr. Craven and they can talk to you. They have access to you. You gave me access and we've never met before. And that meant something to me. It means a lot.
Well,
blessings
thank you
to
so much.
my brother. Blessings to you. I see great things for you. The half is yet to be told what's going to happen in your life. And that's for real. The half has not been told. You have made your ancestors very proud. You made them. They look down, they see you, and they go like, Charles, you better go. You better go. So without any further ado, God bless you and thank you so much. Until we meet again. Amen.
Thank you so much for having me, Pastor, and please tell the other Pastor Thompson I said.
I will. He's going to be tickled pink when he sees this and record this. He's going to be so happy. Trust me, he will. Blessings to you, my brother. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.